Well, many in your party voted for that 14th century solution.
People from coming in.
All right, many in your party voted for that 14th century solution. I guess what I'm asking is, are you open to that in any way, shape, or form as part of a security package?
I will look at what are the threat assessments so we can address that issue. I have not voted. You know, I really think the wall is a 14th century solution. You know, the bad guys are creative. What they'll do is keep in mind if you put a barrier, they're going to go around, or they're going to use a catapult, or they're going to use a ladder to climb over.
You're open, right? Anything could happen. We'll see, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Congressman, seriously, I appreciate it. So much we don't know, this much we do. It's going to be an interesting day tomorrow. Here comes the 5.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino along with Katie Pavlich, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is the 5. Democrats continuing to embrace progressive policies. 2020 hopeful Elizabeth Warren making these claims about capitalism while talking about her wealth tax plan.
I believe in capitalism. I see the wealth that can be produced, but let's be really clear. Capitalism without rules is theft. Encouraging companies to build their business models on cheating people, that's not capitalism. What I believe is capitalism with serious rules, and that means rules where everybody gets a chance to play.
Senator Bernie Sanders joining in on Warren's calls to tax the wealthy, the potential 2020 candidate proposing a plan today to dramatically increase estate taxes, including a 77% tax on billionaires' estates. And Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Edward Markey are reportedly planning to introduce legislation for a Green New Deal as early as next week. The goal of the plan is to transform the economy in the name of fighting climate change. This leftward shift creating a rift within the Democratic Party. Moderate and former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz clashing with Ocasio-Cortez, a liberal activist claiming AOC and not Schultz is the actual centrist.
It's easy to call what AOC is doing as far lefty, but nothing could be further from the truth. When you advocate for economic policies that benefit the broad majority of citizens, that's true centrism. What Howard Schultz represents, the centrism he represents, is really just trickle-down economics, tax cuts for rich people, deregulation for powerful people, and wage suppression and benefit cuts for everyone else without the overt racism. He is not the centrist. AOC is the centrist.
How about that spin, Jesse?
Wow. Well, I mean, ask the people of Venezuela if socialism is benefiting them. I don't buy that argument at all. If Warren loves capitalism so much, why is she trying to institute socialism? I don't think you try to radically change the things you love. For instance, Peter, your husband, he loves you, right?
Yep.
You love your dog, you love reading, you're a Republican. He didn't marry you and then try to change you into a Democrat, dog-hating non-reader. Okay, he accepted it and loved you for who you are. Now, the problem is, she also says capitalism is rules, without rules is theft, okay? We have so many rules in capitalism. There's 185,000 pages in the Federal Registry of Codes, and that's not including city regulations and state regulations. I would say that socialism with rules is theft. So they have this new Green Deal or whatever, okay, where they want to eliminate all oil and gas in 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
If you're in the polar vortex, how are you going to stay warm? With solar panels? Are you going to drive a Prius through a foot of snow? Absolutely not. And they want to tax estates. So I have to give my kids half of my estate when I die, which will be a national tragedy. It is going to be a disaster. So the Democrats have now just become greedy control freaks. They want to tell you what to wear, what to say, what to drive, what to eat, what to drink, and they want to take your health care, they want to take your money, and they want to take your kids' money. Donald Trump's going to win in a slam dunk if they play this way. Okay, he doesn't even have to run attack ads. They're running it against themselves.
Take a listen, Greg, to what Elizabeth Warren, I'm sorry, it's a tweet. This is what she said about this Green New Deal. Our children and grandchildren should grow up in a world where they can breathe the air and drink the water and go outside without risking their lives in extreme temperatures. It's time to protect our planet and pass a Green New Deal. And then she uses hashtag polar vortex. You think it's going to work?
Well, I will say this. I learned from Jesse that the key to a good marriage is don't try to change your spouse.
Exactly.
I think that's a really
Love
good
them for who they are.
I was stunned. I've been silenced over here because I was like,
I think you should write a book. Write a book on this, Jesse.
how did Peter and Dana and I mean I've known Dana. She's been a Republican all along. What's going on here?
I'm saying, so because she said, if you love capitalism, I love it so much, but then why is she trying to make it socialism?
But if Dana started doing crazy stuff, I hope he might say something to her.
Here's the issue.
Well, that's what we're trying to say to the Democrats. Don't do crazy stuff.
Well, no, I think that's what people are
Right?
saying to Republicans in an era of tremendous income inequality.
Sorry.
Let's
Okay,
give
can I just
Greg the floor.
Thanks. Here's the thing. When I always try to steel man Warren's arguments. I mean, I pretend like I'm her lawyer trying to explain what she said better than she said it.
Okay.
She's basically saying capitalism is good unless it's bad. That's exactly what she said. You can't say that about socialism because it's all bad. Think about this. Capitalism, even with its flaws, is easily understandable and successful. Like capitalism is so easy to do that even a kid can do it. At 6 years old, a kid can understand capitalism and have a lemonade stand. There is no kid trying to operate a socialist enterprise at 6 unless he has a standing army of 12-year-olds with baseball bats, because in order to do socialism, it has to be top down and it has to be enforced by a government army.
That's called the bully.
Yeah, you need a bully for socialism.
Can I say something? What about a family? Isn't a family, because the kids aren't providing it, you're taking care of your children.
Yes, your children are little socialists, and that's why we take half of their allowance when they do this. This is why you take the allowance. You pay them for the chores, and you take half of it away and say that this is going to the government.
Well, I think part of this is a response to Gregory. I think we have things like child labor laws. We say, no, you can't do that. You can't exploit children like that. That's not socialism. That's a restraint. That's a restraint.
It's 100 years ago, Juan.
No. That's
100
right.
years ago.
Because that's the rules. I mean, we have rules about things like you can't pollute the air. Oh, why is that? That's restraint
Let me ask
on
you this.
capitalism.
Do you think that old people should work more? I think it's wrong to have retirement at 60. What is it? 65. We should kick it up to 75 or 80.
Wait. Juan just hit 65.
I'm going to hit 65 so I can work less.
Katie hasn't had a chance to talk. Go for it.
So, capitalism is done through free exchanges. Socialism is done through government force. That's the first big difference between the two. And I hate to tell you, Juan, but you are completely wrong about us being in an age of extreme inequality in income. Since 1970, the number of people who have been suffering from starvation-style poverty, not just being poor, but suffering from starvation around the world, has decreased by 80%. In 1970, it took Americans 2 months to save up enough money to buy a TV. Today, it takes 2 days to make that much money. Capitalism has been the only form of government government or system program that has actually taken people out of poverty. We've seen the war on poverty fail. We've seen that these social programs are running out of money and they want more of them. A quarter of people in the world today are living on less than $1 a day.
Listen,
a couple years ago, it was 1 in 20 people.
Katie, hold on. I just want to respond. I think you're right. Those numbers are exactly right about global situation. But here in the United States, we live in a time when 50% of Americans can't afford an emergency $500 bill.
That's not necessarily because of wages. That is because of choices, or it's because of student loans.
No, that's because of income. We have concentrated wealth now among people like our children.
There are more billionaires now than there have been in America.
Yes.
As they get richer, they are getting richer. But guess what?
Thank you.
Everybody else is getting richer faster at a higher rate than the billionaires are getting richer.
I think Greg has a good point.
Well, okay, so everybody keeps talking about how the median household income is getting lower, and this is proof of the economic inequality. No, it's because we've doubled the number of single households in 50 years, which means that even though there's a decline in median household, it's because there are more households with people actually making more money, but they are the single breadwinner. So actually, we've been doing really well. And the other thing that Katie brings up that you just said quickly, but it's really important, Technological innovation is making us so well off. So even when we're making slightly more money, we're actually infinitely richer. Somebody making 20 grand right now is far wealthier than a king in 1910.
Right.
Because
but Greg, if you get sick, if you have an illness, if you're and you go to, and you can't pay for it, that's not a king.
That pays for it.
That's why half of Republicans favor single parent. You guys act as if, oh, this is ridiculous.
Wait, no, Karl Rove wrote about that today.
Yes.
And but he said when you get into it, it's like the number drops off by half of support.
But my point to you, Dana, is look at the reality that people right now in this era of income inequality, including Republicans, are worried
We're in
about
an economic boom, Juan.
Oh, is that economic boom for the rich?
Yeah, not for the rich. Wages are up for the middle class.
Next, a Virginia abortion bill creating a brand new controversy. Obviously, we need another controversy. That's next.
And it makes you wonder what would happen if there was no pro-life movement.
Yeah, well, I think that it's important to say that I'm not conflating the two issues because he specifically said when we talk about third trimester abortions and then went on to talk about it. So he may have answered the question in terms of hospice care, but he did say he was talking about third trimester abortions and didn't actually answer the question, Jesse, from the interviewer in the radio interview because he didn't condemn the bill or say that he supported it.
Well, I don't like talking about abortion. It's private, it's very personal, and it's very painful. But when I saw the sonogram of my twins, it definitely had a huge personal impact on me, and I know other people have that same feeling. But everybody's different, everybody's journey is different, and women are faced with a lot of tough decisions. There is a pretty strong consensus in this country that late-term or partial birth abortion is very, very wrong. Split down the middle on abortion. Actually, I think we're a little bit more pro-life, but only 13% of Americans support partial birth abortion. And you can tell how horrible it is and grotesque by the way that people refuse to talk about it in detail. They talk about it in vague clinical terms because when you actually talk about the procedure in graphic detail, you can't help but feel shame if you support it. And that's why there's a media blackout on it, and that's why you could tell even the woman supporting the bill didn't want to talk about it. But I believe, and as Greg said, the more you talk about it in detail, the more people know what it is, and the more people can say no.
So Juan, this bill was it was voted down, but it was co-sponsored by 20 Democrats. One of the Virginia delegates, Dawn Adams, who co-sponsored the bill, apologized to her constituents for co-sponsoring it after admitting that she didn't read it. What about Democrats in deciding that they're going to introduce all of these bills across the country and it enables women up to labor to have late-term abortions?
Well, I just want to second what Jesse said. I think it's a very difficult topic to talk about. And, we go back and forth here on the five, but this is a very touchy subject for so many people. I don't take it lightly. I love kids and I love my grandkids. But I think I think Ralph Northam's on the right track when he speaks and says, this is a decision to be made between women and their doctors, not politicians in some legislature. And the current law, right now, it says you can have an abortion in the third semester if, in fact, you see that the child has some medical issues that would complicate issues or a threat to the mother's life. Again, you need 2 doctors plus the primary care physician to make this decision now. The new bill would have reduced the number of doctors involved. But what we're talking about here is a situation in the country where I think right now it's like, I think there's 7 states where there's only 1 abortion clinic in the whole state, which is essentially forcing the politicians' attitudes on women. And I don't think that's right. I just don't think it's right. And Jesse, by the way, the numbers I see from Pew says 58% of Americans, a majority, say yes to legal abortion in all or most cases.
But Dana,
I've seen different polls.
There's plenty of polling, but politically this is happening because Democrats feel like Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned with the recent shift in the Supreme Court. Is this something that's going to play well?
It's a huge political fight, but and also it's a fight on the merits, but it's also a fight on politics and
money.
It's a fight in order to get people fundraising and to get people to the polls. So that's absolutely going to happen. When President Trump tweeted today, the Democratic Party is becoming the party of open borders, high taxes, abortion on demand, and I can't remember the 4th thing, but it was his point. Crime, high crime. Thank you. The question is the question on this is that, okay, if the Democrats don't want to have a situation like this where there's either they say that their words are being misinterpreted, then first of all, read the bill before you co-sponsor it. That's like a good idea. But also word them carefully, because these words really matter. And we are charged as human beings at the top of the food chain. We have brains and hearts, and we have science, and we have faith, and all of that informs how we think about things and how we talk about things. Now, a fetus is not viable, to their point, until it's born, and then it's born and it has these inalienable rights that our country bestows upon the innocent. So I don't mind having the debate. It should be held respectfully, of course. But I do think that the reason that the Democrats are finding themselves in this position today with all of this scrutiny is because they were super uncareful. And I also think that they don't realize that people are actually paying attention. You might not read the bill in Virginia, but that means that everyone else is still going to talk about it. This bill just passed in New York. There's another one happening in Rhode Island. And the bill was tabled in Virginia. But the Republicans narrowly have the majority in Virginia, and they had to fight for it. The bill was tabled 3-2,
Right.
and it could come back at any time. So that's why it will be a big political issue in 2020.
All right, not going away. Your tax dollars are hard at work in D.C. paying for the plastic straw police. Greg breaks it down next.
Let me teach you something. All eyes on me.
Washington, D.C. has many problems. Most have a D or an R after their names. But thank God the city's tackling the most pressing problem of all, plastic straws. D.C. now has a plastic straw inspector that visits restaurants, warning them of steep fines if they don't get rid of the evil, thin, hollow tubes. Being found with a straw can earn you an $800 fine.
Jeez.
That's more than the fine for practicing medicine without a license in Connecticut. Don't ask me how I know. Worse, it's more bureaucratic harassment that rattles cashiers and clerks just trying to do their damn jobs, and the hassle solves no problems. The overwhelming majority of plastic waste in the ocean, which seems to be the hot button issue here, comes from 10 rivers, all from Africa and Asia. It ain't us, which poses a problem for left-wing activists who need an America to protest. Meanwhile, all that stuff you separate ends up back in the landfills because there's no market to sell the stuff. Recycling was sold to us as a magical solution, but even mainstream media outlets like 60 Minutes know it's garbage. So as usual, our nation's busybodies ignore the consequences of their actions. Plastic straws are necessary for people with disabilities as well as the elderly. But who cares? Every ban is considered progress for feverish prigs. After all, why should someone possess a product that makes life easier when the lives of the activists are so grim? More so than those straws, they truly suck. Do you know what, Dana? Do you know $800 in Wyoming, Florida, and Mississippi? Simple assault is a fine of $500.
Wow.
But a straw is $800.
Better not have a straw. You know, it happened to me just the other day when I was in D.C.
What?
Tried to get a straw.
No.
I'm kidding.
You assaulted
I didn't get anything with a straw. But I'm going next week for the State of the Union. I'm going to check it out. This reminds me of when I stockpiled light bulbs.
Yes.
For years. Remember there was the warning that the light bulbs were going away?
You were the light bulb lady.
Oh, yeah. Every time we went to, what was that, Frager's on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., I was like, get some more light bulbs, Peter. And then we moved them from D.C. to New York.
Yes.
Did they all break during the move?
Nope.
Okay.
And what I feel bad about are the clerks and the cashiers
Yeah, I've got to deal with
getting
this.
yelled at by the customers because they want a straw.
Yeah.
And the fine, but they don't have to pay the fine.
Yeah.
Like the owner pays the fine.
Well, let me just say, as a resident of the District of Columbia, you can get a straw, Dana Perino. It just won't be a plastic straw.
No,
Those
well, have
paper
you
straws
tried
are-
them?
Yeah.
You have 2
They
points.
dissolve in your cup.
Nobody
No, they
likes
don't.
it,
They
and also
break
it's
down real quick.
it's still
Like
not
in 5
that biodegradable.
We should have them on set tomorrow and start the 5 with all of our cups, with the
Wait a
straw,
minute.
and see how long they
You
last.
mean I can spitballs through the straw?
Absolutely.
That's like the big stuff. That's
Not if
but
it's
you know what?
soggy.
Oh.
Juan, the spitball is the issue because it gets soggy with a paper straw. You need a plastic straw for spitballs and some other things. But let's not go there.
Dollar bill, Greg.
What do you mean?
I don't know. What do you
What are you
mean?
talking about?
It's a spitball. You roll up a dollar bill.
You roll up a dollar
I
bill.
have no idea what you're talking
You
about.
know, Jesse, 60 Minutes. Like, was it a couple of months ago? Was it December? Did this piece. Now, I've seen people, John Tierney has written about this. John Stossel's written about it, about how recycling is more expensive and nobody's buying it and blah, blah, blah. And they're actually taking the stuff that you separate out and they just throw it back in the landfill. This was on 60 Minutes. So maybe we're coming to our senses.
Well, I was always come to my senses because I never recycled ever. So now everything's coming back full circle and I stayed in the same
Jesse,
place.
just stay in the same place, Jesse.
Don't you love that? Yeah, the inspector's job sucks.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him. Did you get that joke? You missed the joke.
You feel bad for
So-
We
him?
already used that joke,
Yeah.
so you recycled his joke.
Yes.
I do recycle. Here's my honest opinion, though. I've flip-flopped on the plastic straws.
No.
I've enlightened. See, Juan, it is possible to flip-flop based on facts. If they are getting in the Potomac
Yes.
because they can't be recycled because they're too small, what's the big deal if you use another type of biodegradable straw? Other industries can pop up and make these things.
I'm for
It's not going to cause a
innovation.
huge dent in the plastic industry.
You just lost that speaking engagement at the U.S. Plastics. Don't you know? The more you defend these straws.
They pay well.
Let me tell you, Jesse, there's more in the Potomac than plastic,
plastic
straws
straws.
that are
I
a much
know.
bigger problem. The problem is finding people. I know we might have plastic or paper
it's
straws
aggressive.
tomorrow. I
The
brought a
fines.
real plastic straw to set today. I'm wondering if, the fine for having a straw is $800. What's the fine for smuggling straws into the city? So, like, if I bring straws
how you
in my
smuggle 'em.
purse, how much? It's like 10 straws, considering high-capacity straw smuggling.
Oh, that's true.
They should come up with
I don't know. I had a lot of life.
I'm not explaining, Juan, I am not explaining you what I just said.
Well, I will say this too, that I think we're supposed to be, good stewards of the earth, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with trying?
I'm all, you know
agree.
what I think? I think
Conservation
this is a
is
great
good.
time for innovation. The current paper straws don't last long enough, so
No.
that's annoying. So all you smart whippersnappers out there,
You know, I have an idea. Plastic straws. Nothing will ever be better. By the way, China, Indonesia, Philippines, they all pollute plastic. They just fill the ocean with plastics. Ain't us.
Can I just say one thing about straws?
What?
The only people that use straws are babies, okay? Or when you go through a drive-through so you don't spill. Or if you're at like a fruity drink or something like that.
How about at the ball game?
Wait a minute, though.
Or if
No, everybody can drink out of a glass.
No. I'm saving you a lot of heartache. Agree with me when I say this. The disabled rely on plastic straws.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And they should be able to have access.
Thank you.
The D.C. bill allows them to have their plastic.
elderly.
I read the bill, Greg.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know the best thing that ever happened at our house?
What?
When my mom would actually let us buy those spendy straws.
Oh, silly straws.
They're cool.
They were
That's
great.
fine.
Don't ban those silly straws because then only silly people will have them. Don't know what that meant.
That's a straw man.
The straw man argument again. The media mocking Sarah Sanders. What she said and how she's fighting back. That's next.
It's about time your heart fills up. I can make you mine.
The marriage was built to last.
You are so...
I think God calls all of us to fill different roles at different times, and I think that he wanted Donald Trump to become president.
I wonder if God wanted me to do this job.
Satan did.
Yes, Rupert.
Thank you.
The devil made you do this.
Thank you, Greg. Democrats in the media instantly mocking Sarah Sanders, though, for that comment.
No, he didn't. Even God was like, what the hell? I can't take my eyes off you people for a minute.
Well, if he did, it's because he wanted to punish us for taking our democracy for granted. This president is actually the antithesis of Jesus Christ's teachings.
I believe that God called me to make sure that people know that Donald Trump is not the dude. So, hey,
Right.
We're both called.
All right, Sanders also taking aim at the White House press corps for grandstanding during briefings.
This isn't everybody, and I don't want to generalize the crowd, but I mean, you see a lot of angry faces, people that their sole purpose is to find this gotcha moment, to catch you. Their job is not to get information, which is what the briefing is supposed to be. It's to trip you up. And I think if the briefing loses purpose and it isn't a good resource for the American people to get information and answers to real questions, then you do have to wonder if that's the best forum in order to put a message out.
Well, going back to the top, Greg, I bet the media is thanking God every day Trump's president.
Oh, my God.
The headlines.
Are you kidding me? They're making more money than ever, the publishing industry especially. I think this is, it's okay for Kimmel and everybody to make jokes about it. They were actually pretty funny. But it is an example of a media mocking, let's say, a Christian displaying their faith openly, when we know they would dare not do that if she had cited the Muslim god or a Buddhist prophet or whatever. If she'd gone in any other direction, if anybody had done that, it never would have happened. I think she probably meant he was the right person for the right time. I don't profess to know what God wants, and I am always skeptical when people say that.
Well, she wants what's best for you, Greg.
I know. But when people cite religion as a motivating for an action, I just go, you can't know that. I know what you mean. You're saying this is for the best. But I'm always very skeptical of that. And now I'm going to shut up and watch the hate tweets fly at me, telling me I'm going to hell.
All right,
bring them on.
What aboutism over here? I wanted to get Katie's perspective. Charlie Rangel thanked God. Barack Obama was president, said God put Obama in the White House.
Obama said that he was going to lower the sea level, so I think Obama thought that maybe he was actually God.
That's true. It's Moses.
No, look, I mean, she has her own beliefs.
Yes, she
They're
does.
the beliefs of millions of people around the country, and the mainstream media and the comedians can make fun of it all they want. They have the right to do so, but it goes to show that they're willing to continue to insult millions of people who agree with the Trump administration and the people that support them.
What do you think, Juan?
I don't think that was, I think you and Greg said, well, that's her beliefs, let her have them, but I don't think you guys buy it. I mean, to me, if you look at the 10 Commandments, does it say, it's okay to lie, it's okay to cheat on your wife, it's okay to hang around with porn stars?
What's wrong with that last part?
Wait, what?
What's wrong with that last part? That's not in the commandments.
No porn.
There's no porn star in commandments.
What about the paying them off with hush money? That's okay too. Yeah, how about the Russians trying to hurt the Mueller probe? The Russians, God bless them, the Russians must have been instructed by God to go after Robert Mueller's probe.
I didn't hear Sarah Sanders say that Donald Trump was a perfectly moral person. She simply said she believes that God put him in place to do the job.
What a choice. What a choice.
Okay, Dana, what do you think about the comment also about what you said about the White House press
Can I talk about the other thing too, though?
Whatever you want.
So remember that the interview was given to the Christian Broadcasting Network, right? Okay. So imagine
good piece of information.
People.
No one told me that.
Yes. So she's talking to CBN.
It was in the packet, Greg.
And
read the bill.
When George W. Bush was president, they made fun of George W. Bush for years because I can't remember the exact details, but along the way somebody said that he felt called to do this. And they were like, and it was the same type of antipathy for people that are Christian or whatever you are. Like, you're right. Like, I don't know what Buddhists believe, but I'm assuming Buddhists think that you're in the right place at the right time, or that, okay, all of that. There's that. Then what you said, Juan, about like the 10 Commandments, and they're frustrated, all that. But Christians also believe in forgiveness. Yes. And we don't know what is in his heart and what he has asked God for and what sort of forgiveness. That's like none of our business. Guess what? The great thing is we don't have to decide. He gets to judge.
You know
so
what they...
That's
It
great.
could be a she, Dana.
It also could be a she.
You know what, I want to make a point on this.
Yes.
So one day I was interviewing your former boss,
Yep.
George W. Bush. And afterwards, I got so much flack from my bosses for saying, oh, but Mr. President, in my church, we pray for you every Sunday. And people said, why would you say that to George W.
Okay,
Bush?
this is the thing about, and you know what George W. Bush used to say when people said, we're praying for you, sir? He would say, thank you, I can feel it. Okay, so, but then the media would make fun of that too.
Well, they made
Here's the
fun of
thing.
me, I know
The
that.
media for the last 2 years has spent a lot of time, they send reporters out, go see America, go figure out how we got it so wrong. And this is part of the reason why we can let them have that. To your point of why in the press room, I think it's not that they're just trying to trip you up. In the press room, how do you make news? One of the ways you make news is if you find inconsistency. It's not just that, oh, you're going to tell me these things and I write them dutifully down and I don't get to argue back and say, well, that doesn't wash with this. And a lot of people in the room are frustrated that they were maybe called fake news on something and it only turns out 4 months later that was actually true. So that is why they look for inconsistency. They're trying to break news.
But maybe it hurts her that her president says that the press is the enemy of the American people.
I don't think that hurts
There's
us.
certain reporters who take up all the oxygen, which means everyone
It makes
gets
it
punished.
hostile, makes
Juan,
the
do
press
you
feel
pray
hostile.
for President Trump at church?
Every Sunday.
Oh, God. Keep it up, Juan. You're doing a great
Good job, Juan.
You can feel it. If you think there's nowhere Dana's dog Jasper isn't welcome, well, think again. That is
Ooh, and the rollback bandana.
for America's dog, Dana's dog, Jasper, not welcome. And where, sorry to say this, Greg, animals are not great. That's what's happening in Iran's capital city of Tehran, where they banned walking dogs in public, and also they banned driving Fido around in a car. Authorities hoping the ban helps discourage dog ownership, saying they, quote, create fear, anxiety among the public. Also in Iran, dogs are reportedly viewed as unclean. Dana, how can we go to anyone but you?
Well, here's the thing. We've been waiting for the moment when the Iranian people will finally rise up against the regime, and we should be there for them.
Yes.
Like we were not there for them during the Green Revolution.
What would you call this? The paw revolution?
I was thinking of the Brown Revolution, but that's kind of the problem. That they're saying they're unclean.
Oh.
They create all this anxiety.
Revolution.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Also, look, for a millennia, human beings have interacted with dogs and had them as their protectors and their companions, or a reason they're called man's best friend. And there's all this crime in Tehran, and people actually need their dogs to keep them, one, safe, and also it's such a crappy place to live that the dogs actually make it better. I'm ready to take up arms myself.
Oh my gosh.
Can I have to say.
You agree?
Well,
Tehran.
Well, it's a religious-based law, correct?
Yes.
So we are upset when we hear this. Imagine being like a practicing Hindu coming to the United States and going into a Ruth Chris steakhouse. You know, isn't the cow a sacred animal, and we butcher millions of them a year? So in religion, you know, Jews don't eat pork, and I believe Muslims detest dogs, and they also don't eat pork. The Hindus embrace cows. Christianity's different. We had an ark.
That's right.
We had an ark.
Is that ark then?
I have no idea what I'm saying. I guess what I'm saying is a lot of this is religious based, and so we think this is weird, but the Hindus must look at us and go like, you're killing our most sacred, symbolic.
I appreciate your argument, but can't you just agree that this is stupid?
I will. I was trying to find a different angle.
So Jesse, I gotta say, when I'm walking down the street, especially in tough neighborhoods where guys are walking around with these pit bulls, I am scared. I am anxious.
Like in my neighborhood one?
Oh, that's your neighborhood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rough streets.
Rough streets, yes.
I have a different angle on this. I mean, I used to hate dogs as much as the Ayatollah did until I bought Rookie. And now I love Rookie, and I think the mullahs just need a mini poodle like I got. It's made me gentler, calmer, more peaceful. Maybe they'd give up their nukes if they did that.
It's really rounded your hard edges.
It has. Maybe the CIA should send over some dogs. You know,
airdrop them.
Oh, yeah. Unleash the dogs of war.
Parachute poodles. The parachuting poodles.
There it is.
Yes. Bag the dog.
CIA needs to get on
So
that.
Katie, so we've heard so many, this is an interesting discussion. We've heard angles about religion, about actually knowing a dog. But according to a lot of the rulers in Iran, this is a symbol of the old monarchy.
Right. They believe
that the rich, the middle class, the upper class.
The upper and middle class have dogs, and they're cracking down. The regime is cracking down on this because it's the last freedom that any of these people have. They don't have access to social media, the best internet, all that kind of stuff. So now they're not even allowed to be happy and have their dogs. There's a lot of people in Iran who are saying they're going to fight back against this, and they're still going to walk their dogs and fight about it in the streets with the people who are patrolling around saying you can't have your dog out. So this is just another reason why people hate living there, and they're willing to rise up against the regime. Another one.
We will stand with you.
Yes, we will.
We will walk with you with a leash.
You know where you can't have a dog is Israel. You can have all the dogs you want there.
Is that right?
Yeah, you can.
Well, good. By the way, how do you like the dog?
I love my puppy.
What, it's all over you? Do you have to walk it?
I do. I had to walk it in the freezing
It's not a
cold
cat one. You have to walk it.
No, I know, but I'm saying, you know, maybe somebody else. Jesse hires a dog walker.
Well, on some days when I'm out, I hire a dog walker. They can be very expensive.
I hire a man in a rubber suit dressed as a dog, and he does everything I want.
Okay. All right, we better leave on that note.
Okay,
That's also banned in Tehran.
One more thing. What's up next?
Don't kill.
It's all right.
We haven't done this in a week.
Robots are great. Robots are great. Robots are great.
Somehow it doesn't have the same charm as animals are great, but I'll tell you what, this is another step towards super intelligence of artificial intelligence. A robot playing a Jenga doesn't use the same kind of strategies the humans do. He's more like a forklift. But this is great if you're lonely, if you're a lonely person. You can play with your robot. I've never played Jenga.
What?
I've never played it in my life. I hear it's good to play when you're drunk.
I'm very good at this.
Yes, and look at this, but he looks like a tiny little forklift. Anyway, this is another step in the right direction for AI. And a case in point, that is why we need artificial intelligence. Because humans hit the wrong buttons.
Because humans aren't great.
Robots are great. Robots are great. Okay, I'm going to go next. Andy Dalton, the quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals?
Yeah.
Kidding, I did know that. So he's going to join the daily briefing tomorrow. So we're going to talk a little football, but also he's coming on with, because he's part of a group of other NFL standouts like Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, Jesse, Aaron Rodgers. They're working on something called It's a Penalty campaign to harness the power of sport to prevent abuse, exploitation, and trafficking on a global scale. So major sporting events like the Super Bowl become this hotbed of trafficking. So It's a Penalty is attempting to stop that. They have a short film. It's being played by airlines and Atlanta area hotels to help spread the message. Guess what? This morning, in the lead up to the Super Bowl, federal law enforcement officials announced that they have arrested 33 people in the Atlanta area already for sex trafficking in a planned operation. So you can find more at itsapenalty.org, but check out Andy Dalton, who will be on with me tomorrow on the Daily Briefing.
So where there's a Super Bowl, there's more sex trafficking.
Yeah. Yep. Or any sort of big event like that. The Super Bowl for sure is a bad situation. Juan.
Baseball legend Jackie Robinson would have been 100 years old today. His baseball debut marked the first time Major League had a black player in 63 years. Blacks were banned after the Civil War, late 1800s. Robinson was a 6-time All-Star. He led the Brooklyn Dodgers to their first World Series victory in 1955. And Major League Baseball is going to be celebrating the centennial of his birth all year long, the entire 2019 season. They started today with an exhibit at the New York City Museum. After his death, he won the Congressional Medal of Honor, Presidential Medal of Freedom, and every April 15th, all Major League players wear 42 in his honor. Take a look at Ed Henry's book about this, by the way. Happy birthday, Jackie.
Do we have to?
No, you
can't. I don't want to read Ed Henry's book.
Did you see the New York Times special pullout section today?
I did, and there's so many great photos.
Yeah, I looked at the whole thing. Yeah. I'm very well versed in this now. Jesse.
Sometimes you shear the sheep, and sometimes the sheep shears you. Check out this video here. A sheep bounding off 2 walls like he's Jackie Chan and tackling an unfortunate farmer. Unlike the kid from yesterday on the trampoline, we have no confirmation that the farmer was okay. We just hope.
You have very strange One More Thing choices. That guy looked like he got hurt. Could someone from the farm please let us know?
Let me put a call. Yeah, they say he's fine.
Okay, good.
I said we covered it.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Okay, sticking with the sports theme real quickly, last year, the first and only father-son foot golf is the new sport where you play golf with your feet and a soccer ball. They were the national champions, Darren and Carson Carusos, both won their titles in Florida. And then recently, they went to Morocco to represent the United States against 35 other countries and 400 participants and came in 3rd place with the United States of America in the first ever World Cup in
We
Morocco.
will dominate that sport. We will be dominating that sport in about 10 years. Okay.
Yeah, we will.
Set your DVRs. Never miss an episode of The 5. Special report is up next. It is very special. Hey, Brett.
Hey, Dan, and thanks. This is a Fox News Alert. Welcome to Washington. I'm BRET BAIER. A record-breaking bust at the border and a big concession from China on trade. 2 very big stories we're following tonight as a scan of a truckload of cucumbers coming from Mexico produces the biggest fentanyl bust in U.S. history. Nearly 254 pounds of the synthetic drug, an amount so big it could kill more than 100 million people. The bust coming as border security negotiations keep hitting the same sticking point here in Washington. We'll explain that. Plus, the Trump administration could be getting closer to a trade deal with China as Beijing makes a big purchase of U.S. supplies in what the president is calling a fantastic sign of faith. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Correspondent Trace Gallagher with that big bust along the border. But we begin with Chief White House correspondent John Roberts from the North Lawn, where the standoff between House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the president over the border wall seems to have worsened, while the tensions with China seem to be getting better. Good evening, John.
Brett, good evening to you. The White House firmly believes that there are some Democrats in Congress who want to give President Trump at least some of what he is looking for a border wall. The problem for the White House is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is not one of them. As the Homeland Security Conference Committee began its second day of negotiations over a border wall, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi appeared to take the word negotiation off the table.
There's not going to be any wall money in the legislation.
In the Oval Office today, President Trump pointed to the latest Honduran caravan, now in Mexico City, as another urgent reason to block the flow of illegal migrants across the border.
If there's no wall, it doesn't work. You can forget it. Our country is going to be a very unsafe place. If you go to Tijuana and you take down that wall, you will have so many people coming into our country that Nancy Pelosi will be begging for a wall.
While early indications are the conference committee may fail in trying to reach a compromise all sides can live with, President Trump stood by the shutdown that led to the committee coming together.
We've set the table for where we are now. If I didn't do the shutdown, people wouldn't know, they wouldn't understand the subject. Now they understand the subject. They realize what a humanitarian crisis it is. It's called, like in deal making, setting the table, or, setting a stage.
With the president and Pelosi sparring over the border wall, the speaker threw another punch today, taking aim at the president's tweet storm, ripping his intelligence chiefs.
The president just doesn't seem to have the attention span or the desire to hear what the intelligence community has been telling him.
President Trump labeled his intelligence people extremely passive and naive after they played down the threats from Iran in congressional testimony. The president suggesting perhaps intelligence should go back to school.
They said that they were totally misquoted and they were totally, it was taken out of context. They said it was fake news.
Mr. President, I don't think you can hear me.
The president also put a coda on 2 days of trade talks between the U.S. and China, meeting in the Oval Office this afternoon with Xi Jinping's number 2, the Vice Premier Liu He.
And it will be the biggest trade deal by far, but it'll also be the biggest deal ever made. The two largest countries.
On the table in the discussions, the trade imbalance between the U.S. and China, China's theft of intellectual property, forced technology transfer, and ownership rules. Talk out of Beijing today indicated that China may be willing to take steps it never has before. The vice premier carrying a letter to the president from Xi Jinping saying he hopes that the two countries will act in a spirit of mutual respect and meet each other halfway. But U.S. officials say words only go so far. What's crucial is follow-up.
Well, I think we're going to have strong enforcement language both ways. They want enforcement too.
U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer characterized today's talks as intense. The president's chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, said they may set a course for a final agreement. And President Trump said that final agreement may come down to he and President Xi Jinping of China hammering things out. Meantime, the Chinese are looking to see whether or not they could schedule a Trump-Xi summit off of the back of the president's upcoming meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. A lot of moving parts, Brett.
A lot. Big developments today. John, as always, thank you. As we told you at the top of the show, Border Patrol agents made their biggest fentanyl bust in history at a U.S. point of entry from Mexico. Correspondent Trace Gallagher joins us live from Los Angeles with a look at that drug haul. And Trace, that was huge.
Big time bust, yeah. The tractor trailer filled with cucumbers was flagged for a secondary inspection at the border checkpoint in Nogales, Arizona on Saturday. The secondary scan then indicated some anomalies with the load, and that's when a canine team zeroed in on the hidden compartment. Most of the 254 pounds of fentanyl was in a white powder form. There were also a few pounds of pills. Total street value was $3.5 million. But border agents say this bust is all about human value, especially considering fentanyl is up to 100 times more powerful than morphine. Watch.
It is said that a quarter milligram, or the size of a few grains of salt of fentanyl, which is a dangerous opioid, can kill a person very quickly.
And to break it down even more, law enforcement agents say 1 kilogram of fentanyl can produce 1 million potentially fatal doses. Today's bust intercepted more than 120 million potentially fatal doses. The CDC says back in 2016 there were 20,000 deaths in the U.S. related to fentanyl. In 2017, the number jumped to more than 28,000. Most of the fentanyl being seized is coming across the San Diego sector, but the brutal and powerful Sinaloa drug cartel controls the Arizona border. And as the cartel begins dealing in more synthetic drugs, Homeland Security fully expects Arizona to become a major corridor for fentanyl trafficking, though it should be noted that fentanyl comes into the U.S. from all over the world, and China is a major source. Today, as part of the trade talks, President Trump announced that China has agreed to criminalize the sale of fentanyl.
They've agreed to do the death penalty for selling fentanyl, and if it's shipped to the United States, that would be a very severe penalty. So I think that's going to have a tremendous impact.
A large percentage of fentanyl from China also comes into the U.S. from Mexico, though some argue a wall or barrier would severely limit fentanyl smuggling. But the DEA says most fentanyl is hidden in vehicles crossing legally at ports of entry. Brett.
Trace Gallagher in Los Angeles. Trace, thanks. Venezuela's opposition leader says police came to his home while he was away today. This as Juan Guaido gets more and more support from across the globe as pressure mounts for Nicolas Maduro to cede power. Correspondent Steve Harrigan reports tonight from inside Venezuela again.
In a dangerous escalation of tensions in Venezuela, disputed President Nicolas Maduro sent special police forces to the home of opposition leader Juan Guaido. That, according to Guaido. The move came despite warnings from U.S. officials that any attempt to harm Guaido, who is recognized as interim president by the U.S., would have, quote, serious consequences. Guaido was speaking at a Caracas university during the raid and has not been arrested. His 20-month-old daughter and her grandmother were home when the police arrived.
Family is sacred, children are sacred, wives are sacred. So do not cross the red line, bureaucrats. To all bureaucrats, think of your families. Think about the code of honor, or what we say in Venezuela, what it means to be a man.
Guaido has been recognized by dozens of countries as interim president. Today, the EU Parliament announced its support. With that international backing, the Maduro regime has not yet dared to arrest him like it did to previous opposition leaders. Today's raid could be an attempt to intimidate Guaido or to test the reaction first before arresting him. Maduro, who is backed by Russia and China, still controls all the levers of government power: the police, the courts, the army. In a recent video, he warned the U.S. intervening in Venezuela, quote, would lead to a Vietnam worse than they can imagine. He has been dividing his time between embracing the military on state-controlled television and asking impoverished people to pray for him. Some dissidents warn the U.S. may have underestimated Maduro's staying power.
Diplomatic and economic sanctions didn't work in Cuba. There were not enough in Cuba to get Fidel Castro out of power. And it may result not to be enough to get Maduro out of power either.
New U.S. oil sanctions will be his first test. The regime gets 90% of its revenue from oil sales and will now be unable to import U.S. gasoline. U.S. officials say they have rejected offers from Mexico, Uruguay, and the Vatican to mediate talks between Maduro and Guaido. Brett?
Steve Harrigan live in Caracas. Steve, thank you. In the second blow this week to President Trump's views on foreign policy, an amendment by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell opposing a quick withdrawal of U.S. forces from Syria passed a procedural vote this afternoon with a bipartisan majority. The move comes just 2 days after the president's intelligence community broke with President Trump on the most significant global security threats facing the nation. Late today, the president said he met with his intel team in the Oval Office and said that they were misquoted. There you see a picture of the president meeting with his intelligence staff and the leaders of the CIA and National Intelligence Department, saying that it was mischaracterized by the media, and they are very much in agreement on Iran, ISIS, North Korea, etc. 7 years after correspondent Marie Colvin was killed while covering the Syrian revolution, a D.C. court has found the Syrian government liable and awarded her family more than $300 million in damages. Lawyers for Colvin's family say they hope to recover the money by targeting frozen Syrian government assets overseas. The Syrian government has not responded to the suit. Back here at home, Virginia's governor touched off the hot-button issue of late-term abortions this week with his comments on what critics believe is infanticide. We brought you that last night. President Trump told the Daily Caller he believes the controversy will lift up the pro-life movement, in his words, like never before. And as correspondent Peter Ducey reports, that could play big in 2020.
Most top Democrats either don't know,
I just don't know what he said yesterday,
or don't want to talk about Democratic Governor Ralph Northam's support of aborting newborns.
The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired, and then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
Fox News tried all day and found just one Democratic lawmaker who even knew what Northam said. It was one of Northam's predecessors as Virginia governor, Tim Kaine.
Current Virginia law, which has been in place since the 1970s, I support, and I don't think it needs to be changed.
Northam's comment comes close to something President Trump said in 2016's final debate.
If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby.
Now the president says, quote, this is going to lift up the whole pro-life movement like maybe it's never been lifted up before. Some Senate Democrats positioning themselves to try to replace President Trump have already staked out positions on late-term abortion because co-sponsors of the Women's Health Protection Act, which would permit third trimester abortions in states that currently outlaw them, include Kamala Harris,
where reproductive rights are not just protected by the Constitution of the United States, but guaranteed in every state,
and Elizabeth Warren.
A woman makes a decision with her family, her priest, her doctor, the people the woman chooses. And I think that's what respects all of us the most.
Other co-sponsors include Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, Sherrod Brown, Amy Klobuchar, Michael Bennet, Jeff Merkley, and Bernie Sanders.
Every Democrat should have to answer for whether they stand with little baby girls who are born alive surviving an abortion, or whether they stand with Governor Northam's repugnant comments. I think the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates should have to answer for this.
Congressional Democrats just wound down a 2-day retreat here on the Capitol grounds, but this late-term abortion issue apparently never came up because senators were telling me on their way out they couldn't comment because they didn't hear about this at the retreat. Brett?
Peter Ducey, live on the Hill. Peter, thanks. Starbucks, the company founded by potential 2020 independent candidate Howard Schultz, hit an all-time high on the stock market today. This despite Democrat threats to boycott the company if Schultz runs as an independent. The Dow lost 15. The S&P 500 was up 23. The Nasdaq gained 99. Stocks finished up over a stellar January. The Dow was up nearly 7.25. The S&P 500 nearly 8%. The Nasdaq was up 9.75%. Congress wants the FBI to answer questions about the early morning arrest of former Trump associate Roger Stone. Several Republicans are joining Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham in asking FBI Director Christopher Wray to explain the use of force in Stone's arrest last Friday. They believe Stone did not meet typical criteria for such a raid, but in a court filing unsealed last Friday, prosecutors said it was indeed fear of Stone being a flight risk or destroying evidence that brought them to his home in the pre-dawn hours. How the media was there is another question also being asked. Well, they are called deep fakes, videos that manipulate video and audio to lead the viewer to believe something that is not true. Sometimes the videos are silly. Others could cause serious confusion and might be grounds for alarm ahead of the 2020 election. Correspondent Jillian Turner has our report.
Recent advances in artificial intelligence technology are making an entirely new type of fake news possible. Deepfakes, realistic-looking and sounding videos created with AI, like this one from BuzzFeed, created to demo what deepfakes look like.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, like Jordan Peele.
If you're one of thousands of American voters concerned about the influence of fake news in 2016's presidential elections, you'd better buckle up for 2020.
We cannot rely on status quo. We have to stay the best in the world, but we've got real competitors.
So far, deepfakes have been used primarily to entertain, like this YouTube video deepfaking Vladimir Putin by transposing his face onto an SNL actor in a skit. Cyber experts warn their power to disrupt future elections is virtually unlimited.
These videos systematically erode public confidence and even just the truth.
Topping their list of worst-case scenarios for 2020, deepfakes fabricating presidential candidates doing compromising things in secret. Virtually anyone can learn how to make a deepfake, like through this 11-minute online tutorial from YouTube account Derpfakes. Lawmakers are paying attention and say it's only a matter of time.
This was used in the Macron election in France. They were able to fight it off because of the nature of what was used. It was documents, but if it was a film, that would have been much tougher.
The real challenge for lawmakers is technology improves so rapidly, it's hard to regulate deepfakes as quickly as they're made.
Well, I remember faked pictures from back in the 50s showed a politician shaking hands with Castro, or this is much more sophisticated and it can be done in video.
Experts say though deepfakes may not yet be convincing 100% of the time, they're improving every day. And now the race is on to identify them faster than ever before. Brett?
Jillian, thanks. Up next, Americans share their warmth during the biggest deep freeze in decades. The Super Bowl will go on as scheduled, just in case you were wondering. This after a federal judge refused to order the NFL to implement a rule that could have led to a do-over of the NFC Championship game between the New Orleans Saints and the Los Angeles Rams. A judge rejected arguments by two Saints season ticket holders who filed suit after a referee failed to call a penalty against a Rams player at a key point in the final minutes of that game. There you see that moment, the pass interference that was not called. Patriots-Rams on Sunday. The bitter cold has settled into the Midwest, I should say, and while the record lows are bringing incredible visuals, it's also causing a lot of problems and has led to at least 13 deaths so far. Senior correspondent Mike Tobin, our intrepid polar vortex correspondent, reports from a frozen Chicago.
A second day with record-breaking temperatures plunging into the double digits below zero and the center of the nation locked in a deep freeze. Roads remain treacherous, demonstrated by dashcam video from a car in Grand Rapids, Michigan, narrowly avoiding a car wreck on I-96.
I about just got caught in a giant wreck.
All methods of travel have been impacted. Thousands of flights again canceled and delayed. Amtrak and the South Shore train lines were halted in Chicago for a second day. Scores of businesses and public offices remain closed. Leaders are stressing the bitter cold still needs to be treated as lethal.
If you don't need to be outside at this time, don't go outside. These are actually a public health risk.
The most vulnerable people got some help. An anonymous donor sprung for hotel rooms for Chicago people living in a tent city. In Indianapolis, volunteers with Meals on Wheels took on double duty performing welfare checks.
A lot of our clients, most of them are homebound. A lot of them don't have family around. So we are doing this service of having that wellness check and making sure that they're okay.
From Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Hammond, Indiana and Buffalo, New York, few were spared the icy grip of the polar vortex as it parked itself over the north-central United States. In windswept and frozen Minneapolis, the residents say they have experience in the cold and the gear to get them through it.
Layers, good layers, invest money in the really good stuff.
Nothing that I haven't been through before, but it's all good. It's just part of living in Minnesota.
The snow and icy grip of the polar vortex was not limited to the heartland. With slick roads and Arctic air in New England, a familiar message: try to stay home until the worst is past.
If you don't have to be on the roads, you should not be on the roads. Let the plows do their work.
The worst of the freezing temperatures are finally past us, with the mercury reaching 0 degrees here in Chicago. We won't see 32 degrees until the weekend, but that does not mean the heartland is out of trouble. You may be able to see it, but a new round of snow is just getting started. Brett?
Hard to believe. Mike Tobin in Chicago. Mike, thanks. Up next, a Florida plot to dig into a bank was foiled, but history shows a robbery by tunnel can actually happen. We'll show you. First, beyond our borders tonight, Canada says it's pulling nearly half of its people out of the Canadian embassy in Cuba. The move comes after another diplomat fell mysteriously ill. Since 2017, Canada has confirmed 14 cases of this unexplained health problem there, while 26 workers at the U.S. embassy in Cuba have also been affected. A Cuban official called Canada's decision incomprehensible. The Trump administration is expected to announce Friday that it is withdrawing from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, or the INF Treaty. That treaty has been a centerpiece of superpower arms control since the Cold War, and its demise has some analysts worrying it could fuel a new arms race. The move follows a long dispute over Russian compliance with that pact. In Spain, Barcelona's crackdown of ride-hailing companies, it is now means the end of service there for Uber and Cabify. Uber says the new restrictions, the crackdown, were incompatible with on-demand services. The new measures were put in place following strikes by taxi drivers. Just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need. Great news for anyone who...
I'm the one who delivers the news around here. Liberty Mutual has just announced that they can customize your car insurance so that you only pay for what you need. This is Phoebe Buckley, on location.
Thanks, Phoebe. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
In the neighborhood.
You don't want to cancel your plans. Cancel your cold. The one-pill power of new Advil multi-symptom cold and flu knocks out your worst symptoms. Cancel your cold, not your plans. New Advil multi-symptom cold and flu.
At Wayfair.com, we think that when the big stuff ships free, it's just better.
Cover better, brunch better, crunch better, rock better, roll better, whoa better, dream better, clean better. Yeah, better!
Oh, Wayfair has free shipping. Game changer.
Fast better, free better, everything's better when
Get
it's
free shipping on orders over $49. Shop better at Wayfair.com.
Wayfair, you've got just what I need.
Vacation rentals? Search Home to Go Florida from $29. Texas from $45. Home to Go California from $34. New York from $37. The world's largest vacation rental search engine.